I am told that in France, military history is no longer very popular. This is a pity, especially in the month of May, which are full of anniversaries of military events. Some of them holidays. You had a holiday on Thursday because of the defeat of Germany in 1945. On the 4th of May, the Dutch have a holiday for their Liberation Day. And on the 10th of May, Saturday, we have the anniversary of the greatest German victory, which was the simultaneous crossing of the Meuse in 1940, which led to France's surrender 6 weeks later. And France was then, as you know, occupied for 4 years. It's easy to forget the wounds inflicted by foreign occupation after a total military defeat. And I want to preface my remarks by just saying a little bit and paying homage to someone I admire very much. Not Monsieur Henriot, although he does feature in my story. I'm very intrigued as someone born in Britain, living in America, two countries that have never been occupied, at least this century, especially the damage done when the country defeated is already divided. Because a considerable number of the vanquished will, of course, welcome and even cooperate with the victor. And this legacy of collaboration can take decades, even generations, to dissipate. I'm going to talk about 1944, but I could also draw your attention to the book by my exact contemporary, of whom you may have heard, Simon Schama, who I first met in 1962. Who wrote a book called Patriots and Liberators about what happened when La Grande Armée, La Grande Nation, crossed the great rivers and invaded and occupied Holland in 1795. I could also talk to you about Iraq, seen through the book of another of my illustrious colleagues, Peter Mansour, who wrote a book called Baghdad at Sunrise on the terrible divisions created by the American invasion of a country that was already bitterly divided. But I talk today of France after 1940, for my generation most vividly shown in the film Le Chagrin et la Pitié. And I was reminded of that when I lived in Paris for a year in 2012. I watched a documentary which was entitled Dénoncer sur l'occupation, based on 6,000 boxes of recently declassified denunciations sent by French men and women to the German Kommandantur, to the French Prefect of Police, and to the Commissariat aux Questions Juives between June 1940 and August 1944. According to the presenter, whose improbable name was Jolly, there were hundreds of thousands, or, he said, if not millions, of letters and notes, some of them anonymous, composed of characters cut out of newspapers and stuck on a piece of paper, others on letterhead. And the 2-hour program that followed there was then a 1-hour studio discussion involving some eyewitnesses who presented a selection of the letters and recreated their antecedents and their consequences. But the program, for me, the bit I remember about that program, which was broadcast in March 2012, was called La Guerre des Ondes. It happened, as luck would have it, just 70 years ago, the 10th and 11th of May 1944. The Minister for Information and Propaganda, Philippe Henriot, who you see on the screen now, the French Goebbels, broadcast on Radio France from Paris several times a day. And on the 10th of May 1944, he chose to emphasize the Jewish background of his Gaullist rival in London, who went by the name of Pierre Dac. But, Henriot asked sarcastically, since his real name is André Isaac, son of Solomon Khan, la France, qu'est-ce que ça peut bien signifier pour lui? Well, the next night, Pierre Dac decided to answer that question. On the 11th of May 1944, this just 70 years ago yesterday. And he took to the airwaves of Free French Radio in London and began with disarming politeness, as he always did, Monsieur Henriot, c'est entendu en vertu de votre théorie raciale et nation socialiste, je ne suis pas français. Let Dac himself talk.
Eh bien, monsieur Henriot, sans pour autant vouloir engager de vaines polémiques, je vais vous le dire, ce que cela signifie pour moi, la France. Laissez-moi vous rappeler, en passant, que mes parents, mes grands-parents et d'autres avant eux sont originaires du pays d'Alsace. Vous avez peut-être par hasard entendu parler, et en particulier de la charmante et riante petite ville de Niederbronn, dans le Bas-Rhin. C'est un beau pays, l'Alsace, monsieur Henriot, où depuis toujours on sait ce que ça signifie la France, et aussi ce que ça signifie l'Allemagne. Des campagnes napoléoniennes, en passant par celles de Crimée, d'Algérie, de 70-71, de 14-18, je fais toujours. On a dans ma famille, moi y compris, j'ai encore personnellement les tresses dans ma chair, et les insignes à ma boutonnière lourdement payés l'impôt de la souffrance, des larmes et du sang. Voilà, monsieur Henriot, ce que cela signifie pour moi, la France. Alors, pourquoi ne pas nous dire ce que cela signifie pour vous, l'Allemagne? Un dernier détail. Puisque vous avez si obligeamment et si complaisamment cité au cours de votre livre me concernant les noms et prénoms de mon père et de ma mère, laissez-moi vous dire que vous en avez oublié un, celui de mon frère. Je vais vous dire où vous pourrez le trouver. Si d'aventure vos pas vous conduisent du côté du cimetière Montparnasse, entrez par la porte de la rue Froidefaux, tournez à gauche, dans l'allée, et à la 6e rangée, arrêtez-vous, devant la 10e tombe. C'est là que reposent les restes de ce qui fut un beau, brave et joyeux garçon, fauché par un obus allemand le 8 octobre 1915 aux attaques de Champagne. C'était mon frère. Sur la modeste pierre tombale, sous ses noms, prénoms et numéros de son régiment, on lit cette simple inscription. Mort pour la France, à l'âge de 28 ans. Voilà, monsieur Henriot, je le répète, ce que cela signifie pour moi, la France. Sur votre tombe, si toutefois vous en avez une, il y aura aussi une inscription. Elle sera ainsi libellée. Philippe Henriot, mort pour Hitler, fusillé par les Français. Bonne nuit, monsieur Henriot. Et dormez bien, si vous le pouvez.
It's what you call a knockout line. And then, well, everybody here will know that in less than a month after that, on the 6th of June 1944, American, British, French and Canadian troops stormed ashore on the beaches of Normandy. But not everyone here will know that 3 weeks after that, the first part of Pierre Dac's prophecy came true. A cadre of resistance fighters burst into his radio station and shot him dead. Fewer still will know that on the 1st of July 1944, Henriot received a state funeral when he was buried in Notre Dame, a ceremony that drew huge crowds. But the date is important. The funeral of Henriot is on the 1st of July 1944. Thousands of people turn up, and yet the Allies have just captured Bayeux. They are besieging Caen, only 250 kilometers away. But for those in the crowd, Henriot was a hero. Also remember that on Himmler's express orders, several French résistants in German custody were shot in reprisal for the death of Henriot, while members of the French milice loyal to Vichy seized any French Jews they could find and shot them as well. So the Guerre des Ondes and that knockout line from Pierre Dac cost the lives at least 20 French men and women. Now, multiply that incident by hundreds, by thousands, by hundreds of thousands. The size of Henriot's funeral crowd. And remember that once the Germans left, obligingly leaving all their archives behind them, all the denunciations are left. And when they departed, a new round of denunciations and revenge began, this time against the collabos. As you visit a French town or village, remember that every inhabitant knows which side their neighbours or their neighbours' parents or grandparents were on during the occupation. And now they also know, because the archives were released in 2012, they also know now who denounced whom. It's an aspect of military history that we seldom remember. Although eventually the troops go home, the harm and the mischief that they do, or that they stimulate or permit others to do, lives on. Nothing is ever the same again. Occupation changes everything. And now, well, if you go to Notre Dame, you won't find Monsieur Henriot's grave. After the war, he was disinterred and buried near the vast chateau he constructed in southwestern France. His grave does indeed have a tombstone, one designed by a German sculptor, but it has no inscription. Pierre Dac lived on until he was 82 and is buried in Père Lachaise. Next Sunday I'm going to go and pay my respects. I will also try to find the tombstone of his brother, Marcel Isaac, that beau, brave et joyeux garçon, fauché par les obus allemands when he was 28. And there too, I will pay my respects. Because although we must forgive, we must never forget. Otherwise, we're going to make exactly the same mistakes all over again.